So the next panel discussion will be about taking a unified strategic approach to address the challenges of the water energy nexus, which will be a nice continuation, actually, of the last presentation. The moderator of the session is Ms. Etna Trainer, the special correspondent for CNBC Arabia. Etna, I'd like to give you the floor to introduce your panelists, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, and to our earlier panel, thank you all for really enlightening us and setting the scene for what we will probably continue on our discussion. Now, I came across a lovely little saying this week. We never know the worth of water until the well is dry. And that was from a British preacher and intellectual, Thomas Fuller, back in 1732. So water has always been a concern for as long as, well, we can remember, and even our forefathers beyond that. The dilemma today in terms of water usage is that the well actually is in danger. The well is in danger of running dry. We know that around the world, and we certainly know it here in the region. And we heard from Her Excellency Razan there telling us again that we are, in a way, in the danger zone at the moment here. So it's time to actually shift gear, and you know, everybody here is very much realizing that and doing something about it. So that's the good news. And indeed, the good news is that progress is going extremely well, and we're coming up with some very creative and innovative solutions. The world cannot really increase its supply of fresh water. Where is it going to come from? So we need to be the ones to change. We need to be the way we manage, the way we use, and the way we consume that available water. Now, agriculture uses just tons of water, but we all have to eat. Industry and the production of energy demands water, but we all need power. We all need heat, we need light, and in this region, we need a lot of air conditioning, believe me. You're having, those of you who are visiting us, we have a little rain on, especially for the summit, but this is not the norm. So again, huge demand on power here. As Her Excellency Fatima just said too, electricity and power generation need water, water needs electricity. So the demands of modern life certainly taking its toll in this region and around the world on global resources. You know, have you ever thought about how much water is used and evaporated to generate and to transmit energy on one hand, and on the other hand, how much energy does it actually take to collect, to clean, to move, to store, and to dispose of water? So in this session, we're going to actually examine how we're going to take a unified strategic approach to address the challenges of the water energy nexus. We're going to take a look at how to set common objectives and targets for improvement. We're also going to look at how to create effective methods for the distribution of water and energy, and the need to solve the interlinked challenges of urban water and energy to really enable the growth of cities and to enable business and, in fact, to enable us all to have a better life ultimately. We have a wonderful panel of experts who's going to get this on topic here, and I want to introduce you to them. We're going to share some international and some regional views, some best practices here, and a few case studies. So when it comes to energy needs of urban developments in the Gulf region particularly, our first speaker is a man who began his career as an engineer with the Riyadh Development Authority. He was one of the key players involved in the construction and maintenance of the diplomatic quarter, and his work from the early 90s with the Saline Water Conversion Corporation, the SWCC, first as a project engineer and then in many more senior roles, and now, of course, he is the Deputy Governor of the SWCC. He's also the President of the International Desalination Association, the IDA, and the CEO of Advanced Water Technology. Big warm welcome, please, for Dr. Abdullah Al-Sheikh. Our next speaker, a gentleman who is passionately committed to managing water resources and finding global solutions for the very demanding energy-water nexus. He comes from a strong financial management and leadership background and began his career with PwC and then entered the water business. He has worked in Latin America, Asia, and the Middle East, and he has led philanthropic clean water projects in emerging markets. So please, a warm welcome for the President and the Chief Executive Officer of Xylem, the American-based international water technology company, Patrick Decker. Joining us also on this panel, a gentleman who provides national leadership on policy positions for the Australian urban water sector on a number of issues. He's an expert on structural, institution and regulatory issues when it comes to water management. He spent many years working with Australia's largest utility, covering an area of almost 13,000 square kilometres. And there he worked in leadership roles in the Science and Technology Group. He's a member of many boards, including a committee responsible for the development of water quality guidelines in Australia. He is the Executive Director of the Water Services Association of Australia. Warm welcome, please, for Adam Lovell. And from the UAE, a gentleman who has more than 20 years' experience in the field of water and power industry. He's held a number of key positions in the Abu Dhabi Water and Electricity Authority, and prior to that, he was the Managing Director of the Abu Dhabi Distribution Company. He has extensive top management level skills, and he's also known for his hands-on approach in project development and implementation. He sits on many boards, as you would expect, and chairs high-level committees in the water and power section. He is the Managing Director of the Abu Dhabi Water and Electricity Company, ADWEC, His Excellency Mohammed bin Jarsh. So here we have our dynamic panel who is really going to put things in perspective for you. Many of you may be aware of our wonderful high-tech gadgets here. By all means, please send your questions through us. I did see earlier a lot of anonymous questions coming, so do please tell us who you are and share it with us. But of course, we're absolutely delighted to actually hear from you. And we do have our moderators here, or our speakers in the room that will actually help us and make sure we have a microphone to you. So please, at any time throughout this session, if you want to question some of our speakers, please feel free to do so. We're going to get this started and just get a sort of situationer from each of the speakers here. So please, I'm going to start with Dr. Abdullah Al-Sheikh, and just give us about maybe 2 minutes of an opener in terms of your position on this energy-water nexus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for this beautiful event. This is the second year for me, and I see it's growing and growing every year. And I think everybody looking forward to meet again next year, inshallah. Thank you, everybody. Sustainability is not just our future. It is our present. Our world is in the middle of a paradigm shift brought on by technology and innovation, and by our needs. We are shifting away from an old model of consumption towards sustainability. Perhaps this is the challenge. Sustainability is mostly defined by energy in the water sector in two ways: economic impact and environmental impact. In the drive towards sustainability, these go together. We are very much interested in forms of renewable energy. Reliance on oil is a suicide for the strategic economic future in our region, and we consider it a matter of survival to switch to renewable energy. Environmentally, the energy consumed by water production is only added to the carbon emissions output that is resulting in climate change. Sustainability is a must in a water sector. Thus, our focus needs to be in how to accelerate and best go about it. A unified strategic approach is a must. I think we can consider cooperation in three ways. First, policy and regional agreements that encourage sustainability. Second, financial and economic incentives and cooperation that promote sustainability. And third, shared technology and innovation and supporting continued development in the region of R&D and its pathway to implementation. This requires leadership and at all levels, with a policymaker, investment and financial institution, and public and private sector. Leadership is the key word. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Abdullah. And I think we probably have everybody on the same page here, I think, agreeing with you, and I think our panel certainly will add to that, and we'll be developing that theme. Patrick, please. And I believe you want to speak from the podium, by all means, yes.
So thank you, Etna, and good morning, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's really a pleasure to be with such an esteemed panel. The challenge. The World Health Organization tells us that by 2050, 2/3 of the nearly 10 billion people on this earth will live in cities, placing greater pressure on both energy and water resources. And nowhere else on the planet is the water-energy nexus more relevant than where we are here today. I want to congratulate the leaders of the UAE for taking a global leadership role in this discussion. I think it's a great example of the foresight that has actually led to this being such a global economic hub within a single generation. At Xylem, addressing the challenges and the needs of the water-energy nexus is a critical part of our long-term strategy for creating positive economic and social value for the world. For us, it's all about reducing the energy consumption associated with the water cycle and reducing the water impact of the energy industry. And technology clearly has a major role to play in this. Studies show that globally, managing water consumes about 8% of global power production. The delivery and use of and the management of wastewater all need to become much more energy efficient. We refer to these concepts as water productivity and water quality. One example of water quality is a process optimization system that we call OSCAR, which uses real-time data and controls to significantly reduce energy consumption at wastewater treatment facilities. At a plant in Sweden that we recently implemented OSCAR and other upgrades, we've been able to work with our partner to reduce energy consumption by 65%. That creates shared value for our customers, our communities, and the environment. Meanwhile, energy production poses its own set of unique water management challenges. Here in the Middle East, produced water from oil and gas production equates to more than 73 million barrels per day. In regions characterized by unconventional production of oil, such as tight oil or oil sands, a single well can require up to 5 million gallons of water. This is clearly not sustainable. Lastly, resilience of water infrastructure. Water variability is resulting in rising economic risk for communities around the world. Floods disrupt power plants, oil refineries, and other critical energy infrastructure. So managing the movement of water around energy facilities during these times is crucial for maintaining resilience. In arid environments, there are some no-regret moves that we believe that can be made, such as water reuse. They're common only here in the Middle East, but also in Singapore, Australia, and the US. Reuse can help close the gap between supply and demand. It's often cheaper on a total life cycle cost basis than other supply projects and can be more energy efficient alternatives, thereby lowering energy costs as well as greenhouse gas emissions. A perfect example here is the Kuwaiti government demonstrated forward thinking in this area by building the world's largest single reclamation and reuse facility. We used our suite of products in this facility to help them build that capability, which now has an expansion plan underway. Projections are that this plant will generate $11 billion in cost savings for the Kuwaiti government over the lifetime of the project. That said, there is no single bullet here that can be used to solve problems, and oftentimes pursuing a single alternative sets us back in terms of our progress. We have to approach these challenges as partners. The answers lie in partnerships, whether it be across business sectors, with academia and governments, amongst regulators and NGOs, entrepreneurs and technologists. Partnering is the ultimate catalyst in securing water security for the world. At Xylem, we do this every day. We partner with customers, we partner with governments, we partner with NGOs to help bring technology solutions. But our tagline is, let's solve water. The important word there is, let us solve water as partners. That's the reason we're here today, and I look forward to engaging in the conversations with the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Let's have a look and a view from what's going on in Australia.
Sure. And thank you very much for having me here. I'm really looking forward to sharing the story of Australia and some of the challenges that we've faced over the past decade. Many of you may have heard in starting around the year 2000, we entered into what we call the Millennium Drought, which is the worst drought Australia's ever seen, ever recorded. And coming out of that, of course, we came out of that with floods. worse than ever recorded. You know, climate change in Australia is here and it's now, and it's evident. And that's generated some really big changes in the way water is managed in our country. So let's go back a couple of steps. When we went into the millennium drought in the early 2000s, we were sitting quite pretty. And I would say as a water sector, we were quite lazy in hindsight. That's really sharpened our pencils. What came out of the millennium drought was desalination for all capital cities, reverse osmosis, water recycling for all capital cities, mostly at the time non-potable reuse, but that's slowly changing. Water efficiency, working with our customers on what at the time was pretty draconian water restrictions. In other words, you could only water 1 day a week and certain times of the day. Now we've entered into a regime where most customers are well aware of permanent water rules. In other words, no hosing down hard surfaces, watering only in the very early morning or late at evening, those sort of things. So we've come out of the millennium drought with a tremendous partnership with our customers, with the general community. But drilling down to a little bit further, and what I think is really pertinent here is the story of Perth. Perth is the world's most isolated city for a population of around 2 million people. It's 5 hours flight from Sydney, for instance, for those of you who have been from Sydney. It's a long way from anywhere. It's stopped raining in Perth. In the past 30 years, it's stopped raining. From an annual yield of around 300 gigalitres of runoff into their dams, they've, in the past 3 years, achieved 10, 12, 15. So Perth now will, by 2022, will be a climate-independent city for water supply. They will have desalination, they have 2 desalination plants, and they will have potable reuse as well for aquifer recharge. So that's the type of scenario that Perth has just had to enter into. But it's also not gone down a manufactured water path without working with its customers to understand what an efficient water use level is. So water efficiency for residential customers has dropped on average around the country from around 350 litres per person per day to now around 200, and that's without restrictions. So customers in Australia, before the drought, have now locked in that behaviour, and they see that as a permanent way of treating water wisely and resourcefully. Just like to point out in terms of the water energy nexus though, drilling down, is if you're driving this bus with your customers and you invite them to join you on that journey, as the bus driver, you've got to be doing the best you can. So for our water utilities, that means being very efficient with energy, and it means being very efficient with their own water use. So picking up leaks quickly, but not acting on them as if the world's going to fall apart, but also being energy efficient in pumping and in their treatment systems. And we've done a lot of benchmarking, which has highlighted some real areas for improvement. I'll leave it there.
Super, thank you so much. So, Mohammed, now it's up to you to enlighten us of all the great work that's been going on in Abu Dhabi.
Well, most of my colleagues here had mentioned sustainability, the need to balance energy and water, and the need of maintaining resources in some means or how. Now, for me, the need for sustainability puts the UAE at the front and the most in need of taking action as a result of the introduction of the fuel mix requirement. Now, every day and day to day, here in Abu Dhabi, I hear, oh, we are burning gas to produce water only. While as a result of the differences between summer and winter and the need and sustained need for water between all seasons, we sometimes burn fuel to produce water only. And that will get worse when such as nuclear and other energy sources come. Now, historically, in the UAE, combined cycle with desalination is thought to be the most economical and reliable way of producing water and electricity. Now, the formula, in my view, is being challenged, this economical formula, as a result of sustainability, or the need for being sustainable and have and maintain water production at an economical value for everyone. The impact of that challenged everyone and created sequential challenges, actually, for RO, for example, and the need for development of, or support the development of pre-treatments. Yes, we are in a region being the most scarce of water, and we are on a gulf that is highly saline and basically salinity, temperatures, and biologically one of the most active, drives the need for, as a result of the need of water for the public and the development of the UAE, really pushes us, not necessarily with a choice, but we realize we are lucky that is economical for us at a very reasonable price to produce water now using alternative technologies. So in the past, we used to dictate technologies for production and for supporting our economic development in the UAE. Now, there is a need to be really a technology neutral going forward, with all that it takes of, yes, considering the fact that all utility industry are very conservative, I think we have to be less stringent, not ignoring the need for being, technology definition, but there is a need for leaving that, yes, I need to go that way, but we should leave it to, I need, the question should be, or what we need to, from the market, or the, so to say, the private sector, we need water with this quality, with this amount, feel free to offer the technology. So I would leave it here, and maybe the questions will come for going further.
Well, thank you so much, Mohammed. And I hear that sentiment been reflected over the last few days, and even earlier at the IRENA meeting, earlier before this conference began, too, we're hearing that. But I believe everybody would certainly agree with you here that it makes no sense to burn fossil fuel to produce water. And even as you were saying there, Abdullah, it's not ideal, it's not economic, and quite honestly, people would probably say it's a very dumb thing to do at the moment. But sadly, we're still doing it. When we look at the concept of utility companies and who they are and what they are, around the world, and indeed, you know, Adam, you've spent time in a utility company, you're all familiar with what a utility company is. They do tend to be just big, and they tend to be immobile, and they're not sometimes, you know, they might be very focused, maybe too focused, but they're certainly not flexible. And I think this is something around the world, it's not just this region. What can you do actually to shift that mindset? Because whether we like it or not, and I'm hearing it reflected from all of you, that needs to happen. Abdullah, are you seeing that begin to happen here, or is it happening, you know, too slowly perhaps?
I think, first of all, we have to look to our regions. We have a very special case here. We are really in need. It is a scarce place, and we are really in need for water and power. And because of the climate you mentioned in your opening, that really we have a severe climate here, and the air conditioning is the largest consumer of electricity. We have with us His Excellency the Minister of Water and Electricity, Engineer Abdullah Hussain, and they are doing a lot of conservation about power and water, and he always mentioned that electricity is the key thing in our region. So you cannot compare our region here in the Gulf and Saudi Arabia with the region in Europe or somewhere else. So you are right, the demand is huge. But I think it's there, the hope is there, and sustainability, we have to continue. And in order to continue, we have to look for a sustainable resource. I would like to quote what Adnan said in the opening when he was talking about renewable and PV in particular. There is a big drop in the cost of the renewable. And based on that one, that really it is a competitive. And I think there is a role from the public side. I think they should also put some incentives. They are putting a lot of incentives in the oil. We are burning it to produce water and electricity. And I think we should have the same incentives in renewable in order to achieve our goals.
Mohammed, you look at power and water, and actually you've said many times that there possibly needs to be a decoupling on this as we go forward.
Yes, because at the end of the day, we have to manage the resources. And as a result of that, through the need for a proper and economic resource scheduling, let's say, water and energy now are produced in a combined manner. That is not going forward, as we see, is not economical. Realizing the prices of fuels, the increasing and the trend for gas, the trends for technology, and the improvement that happened recently in RO technologies, and the methods of O&M development, the practicality and the innovations in terms of going for example, for beach wells, going for different mechanisms acting as. So the question of going forward with this combined, I think it's a major burden, and we should be innovative in decoupling power and water production.
Patrick, when you look at the technology, it really seems to be what's driving everything, and it's driving it, yes, in the right direction, which is great for your business, keeping you busy in this region as well here. Looking at the technology, what do you believe is the favorite technology at the moment? Or does one size fit all? Not necessarily, as you were saying, we need different solutions.
Yeah, I mean, I would first say that I completely agree here that this is a question about leadership. At the end of the day, we actually see more innovation and openness to partnership occurring here in this part of the world than we see just about anywhere else in the world, maybe only other than Singapore that we see, where necessity is the mother of all invention, as we say. So I do really believe that this is going to continue to be a hotbed of innovation in this part of the world. There is no one single technology that is going to solve our issues here. I made a fairly controversial statement in Singapore at the International Water Week event there when asked, what did I see being the big breakthrough technology 15, 20 years from now? And I said, first of all, we don't have 15 to 20 years to figure it out. Second of all, the technologies already exist. But there's no single application. And so I think, as was said earlier by His Excellency, was the fact that we need to partner together and realize that we all have some level of risk aversion. You know, none of us want to take chances with technology here and put our public health at risk or industry at risk, but the technologies are there. So I think having greater cooperation, opening up the research capabilities together, and having a more trusting relationship is part. The second part is it all comes down to education and awareness. And I really applaud the leaders in this part of the world for what you're doing to get at the younger generation and educate them as to the criticality of this issue for future generations. And I think that's going to be a big dividend that's paid over the years.
I mean, I think this region we've always been associated with abundance, and suddenly it's only the last few years people are realizing that actually maybe there's not as much around as we might think. Adam, we've got some success stories, particularly in Australia, where you have managed, in terms of particularly water production, that it is now completely 100%, I believe, renewable sources, is it?
That's right. So the desalination plants that were put in for the capital cities are all powered by green energy. And that was a political commitment made at the time because, except for Perth, if you take Perth out of the question, but for all of the other plants, unfortunately, politics got in the way, as politics gets in the way of nearly everything, doesn't it? Politics got in the way of good water planning, and so you had politicians coming out without much background and saying, well, desalinated water is just bottled electricity. Now, when you're left with dams sitting at 19%, or in Sydney as 32%, and you've got no sight of rain, you have to go for desalination. And of course, when you go for desalination, the politicians were put in a position, well, they had to make a commitment to the customers, to the community, we will use green energy to power these plants. And so we've got dedicated wind farms. The one in Sydney is just down near Canberra. The ones in Perth, the first desalination plant is powered wholly by a single wind farm, and the second desalination plant is powered by wind and solar. So we're moving into that sort of direction for the manufactured water.
And as Al Gore actually said yesterday too, that politics and politicians are actually ultimately renewable as well. So it's hopefully things will change. But again, well done in leading the way on that. Let's take a look at the technology. Mohammed, too, and looking at reverse osmosis. This is something that you have not in trial here, working here in some of the islands, and something that you would like to see. You've seen it work on a bigger scale in other regions. Tell us what you think about this.
We have our all installed long back in the islands here because of them being remote and the cost of connecting them. But I believe we were lucky that they were installed. Somebody installed them in the past, and we realized, wow, they produce water at a good quality, even though they are in the Gulf. Yes, not the quality that we want specifically, but we appreciate our neighbors here. For example, in Bahrain, they have a plant that's producing a very good quality water. And yes, the technology is there. It's the innovation in the pre-treatment, for example, and the improvement of the pre-treatment and the quality enhancement tools, let's say, or technologies, the sub-technologies that we are talking about. And our friends in Oman also, they have, for example, performed an RO with beach well for the deep rocks acting as a natural filter. Now, I think in the UAE, we would love to go somewhere with that. And yes, we have to do some research and development in that regard, but we believe that it is the way forward. The technology is there. It's just the innovation with the technology. Not going forward, we will drain our groundwater. Not going forward, we will be paying massive amounts and drain our economy. And not going forward, well, will just leave us behind, everyone. And like my colleague said, we don't have, not even 10, 15 years, we do not have 5 years to decide. We have to be immediate and innovative.
Now, Abdullah, I was reading an article that somebody had quoted you before, talking about 3 types of people in the world: those who wonder what's happening, which some people do in this environment, those who watch what's happening, and those who make things happen. And ultimately, whether we like it or not, we have to make things happen here.
Yeah, of course.
Tell us a little bit about the new plant that's coming aboard to the Hafji plant in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you for asking. I would love to talk about it. I'm honored to announce here, of course, that next week, inshallah, we will sign with successful bidders to build the first RO plant, which will be powered by PVs. And the size is, I don't think there is in the world that same size, which is 60,000 cubic meters per day. So I think we'll start, so you can, the watch will click starting from next week, inshallah, end of next week. In 24 months, we will have this first plant. And I think that will take us to the implementation part. And we do what we talk about. So I want just to say that and share these things with the audience. And I thank you for that question.
Super. It's great that we're actually seeing some new projects and innovative projects coming on board. I have a few questions here. Please, I'm also happy to take real questions, from you if you want us to actually talk to us. One question, and indeed, if I can put this one to Mohammed, and I'll bring everybody else in on it, and Adam and Patrick mentioned this, the need for education and the need for people to be aware. I have a question here about what actions have been taken in the UAE, Mohammed, particularly to decrease private consumption, so to actually make people more aware about the fact that cutting back probably won't harm any of us.
Well, everyone is cutting back will definitely harm no one. But if we do not cut back, yes, definitely we need to find somewhere else to live. I mean, to that extent.
We're going to have to go to Australia where they've done it. Huh?
It might be worse if people do not cut.
Yes.
The fact that water, our wells, we are the most scarce. Water wells are drained. The fuel prices are going up to the roof. So we are in the UAE. We are trying we started actually long back promoting through education, through showing the facts to the public and make them part of the utility, showing them the need. I mean, if you stop by IWS stand here, you will find a smart home. And that smart home is showing everyone that conservation will not harm you. You still have the luxury of a house with all the facilities that you need, unbelievably available with a small modification. I mean, irrigating your plants through, I mean, I would invite everyone to stop and look at it. It's very simple. With simple methods,
yes,
you can save massive and support your nation, whether here or Australia or the US or Saudi Arabia or anywhere. The fact that also the need of removing subsidies. Things are not, the feeling of having things for granted is complicated. It has to be realized.
Yes.
And further, actually, its impact on the government. Not just on the government, but on the environment and the place we live within. It's a major impact to the environment of, I mean, our forestry.
And financially as well, of course. It's more money in everybody's pocket.
It's a major burden that is not sustainable, as simple as that.
Now, a question I'm going to put to Abdullah, and I'm going to move to Australia and California in a minute. And it works in with this, but a question that we had from Anonymous, whoever's out there. What are the solutions and projects at the GCC countries? And are you actually, many of the countries, working together towards sustainability? Or is everybody building their own project?
The question, I think I would like to have a comment on that one and then go back to the question. I think regarding the management of the supply and management of the demand, in the past, I think that everybody is focusing on the supply. And I think there is a big effort in Saudi Arabia, and maybe the minister can comment on that one, about managing the demand also. So it's very important. And I know that it's the same effort that's been built in UAE, in Bahrain, and most of the GCC countries, about balancing between the supply and the demand. And there is a huge effort being done in the water and also in the electricity. Go back to your question about also working together. I think, yes, there is under the umbrella of GCC, there is a lot of common at the ministerial levels or at the top leader levels or even at lower than the ministerial level. There is a lot of a common project like the grid system. They are, I think, linked. I cannot, the authorities or the minister maybe can comment also. There is a lot of efforts being done about the grid system, linking to the GCC and also linking with Egypt and maybe to Turkey. And also for the water, there's a huge project to link the whole GCC country with a pipeline, but still under study, I think. So I don't know if you would like, maybe the minister can comment. Minister,
would you like an intervention, Minister?
Yeah.
Do you have a moment? I can get a microphone here. Susan, you have a microphone, please. His Excellency, the Minister here. So we put you on the spot in terms of how you're managing water, and we're absolutely thrilled you're here. We're very honoured. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I am dedicated to demand management, really, rather than going into the high tech and diversifying my resources, and because I think it's where the answer lies to our problems. Our friend from Australia said that in time of need they had to reduce the per capita consumption, I think, from 300 to 200 and still enjoy water. I think they came up with a very innovative solution, including doubling up when taking a shower. I think this is in one of the... but they can still go a lot further. Munich, Germany, one of the most prosperous states, in one of the most prosperous city in the first economy of Europe, consumes 90 liters per person per day. So why do we need to spend more than that? Here in the Gulf region, it is very common that you will find 500 and 600 liters per person per day. So this is where the society...
And that's scary. So 500 liters per day per person, yes, where Germany can operate on...
At 90. And this is not a backward country, and it's not in the jungles of Africa. This is the most rich country in Europe, the first country in Europe. So I think before we go into high-tech and diversifying, and is it RO or MSF or MED, or we look at this simple question, and the items that we need are shelf items. We in Saudi Arabia are distributing free of charge a household kit to conserve water. The price of it is 15 riyals, and we give it free. But the payback is only 2 weeks. Oh. So we don't need high tech. We need common sense.
Common sense.
But as Oscar Wilde was quoted as saying, common sense is not always common. Thank you very much.
Bringing it to that, please, having a look at exactly what you did. I mean, when we look at what's going on in Australia and the American lesson as well, in terms of educating people, getting them on board, and necessity, some points, yes, they realize. And again, comes back to, you don't miss the water till the well runs dry, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that came out of Australia is that the government sponsored 2 major schemes. One of them was called the Water Efficiency Labelling Scheme, which means all the white goods within the home, water, washing machine, machines and fridges and everything else has got a water efficiency label on it. It lets the customer decide and choose, you know, what they might like to choose. But we're setting minimum standards. You can't just ship anything to Australia and, you know, and try and sell it. There's a minimum standard for water efficiency in amongst white goods. And in fact, I've saw some modelling recently for Sydney's supply and demand balance, Sydney, of course, being Australia's biggest capital city. And the biggest variable is appliance labelling.
Yes.
Can you imagine that? The biggest variable in Sydney supply and demand balance is appliance labelling. And that's one thing that you can do, which is not over draconian, because after all, you're letting the customers decide what they would like to buy. Outside of the home, we have something called the Smart Approved Watermark, which means it must achieve minimum standards in the way people irrigate their gardens. And gardens are much loved in Australia, and that's the biggest source of outdoor demand. But what I would say, it is definitely a journey. We talk to our customers now about being water efficient like you're talking about being energy efficient, to manage your bills. It used to be we talked about water restrictions and water conservation. We're not saying now you've got to conserve water, but we're saying you need to use every drop wisely. It's priced at the right level. Where you have water efficient goods available in the marketplace, go for your life.
Patrick, if I can come to you, we've had a few questions in particularly talking about California. We don't expect you to be the spokesperson for California, but fill us in on some of the initiatives perhaps in the US. And also, as you said, if people realized the value of water. We all know the price of oil at the moment. Everybody's watching it go up and go down, probably go down, down, down more than it's going up. But there's my friends on the other side are eager that it will go back up at one point. Again, it comes down to, like, nobody knows the price of water, the value of water, and what's the American lesson?
Well, unfortunately, I have to say that we as Americans are not role models in terms of water consumption. And the reality is, as you're saying, Etna, you know, you ask any American and they can tell you by day what the price of oil at the pump is, but they could never tell you what the price of a gallon of water is in their home. And so there's a complete disconnect in terms of that recognition. There's also a lot of talk at the federal and national level about the growing importance of water infrastructure, but the utilities are obviously local, and water is always a local issue. The U.S. is obviously a very large country, and so unfortunately, we, like others, it's only when the crisis occurs that we get a meaningful dialogue. So obviously what's happening in California right now is all about the appropriate pricing of water, you know, the regulation of water, especially on the industrial side, making companies pay their fair share, but also it's all about water reuse. And water reuse, other than parts of West Texas and others, would have never been dreamt that you would actually have potable water from reuse. And I think we're now beginning to get rid of some of those preconceived notions that you would ever drink that water. So I think the issues of Hurricane Sandy on the East Coast, when you have people going to the office where one family happens to live in a neighborhood where they had clean water and could take a shower, and you had somebody working next to you that was in a neighborhood that didn't, people begin ever so slowly to realize that we can't take this for granted, because I would say more so than anywhere in the world, most Americans consider abundant access to clean water a God-given right, yes, as opposed to having to pay some value for it.
Just very quickly, the role of pumps in this, it's a question that came in, industrial pumps and pump-related technology in the water energy nexus, how can that be improved? How can, and it's directed to you, Patrick.
So could you repeat the question, sir?
Yeah, the role of industrial pumps and pump-related technology in the water energy nexus, how important?
Yeah, I would say probably the single biggest driver, I'll point two things. One is we're really focusing heavily ourselves and our peers and competitors on energy efficiency. A lot of those regulations started in Europe. They've now moved into North America, and I think we see the opportunities from combined value creation to improve our cost position, but also improve the energy consumption of customers. Secondly, it's using data and technology to drive smart networks. And so giving more data to our customers to be able to measure the energy efficiency, to also reduce the maintenance cost in the facility that's so that's really the role of the pump.
Mohammed, a few questions coming in. The nuclear environment that is going to happen in the UAE, in terms of any plans to use nuclear power for water desalination? Again, it's a few years away, and many things can have changed between now and then.
we were just chatting before entering this room that there are just pilots. We are not aware of an active commercial production of water from nuclear. But I'd love to mention that, as the minister here mentioned, as a balancing demand and supply, conservation are quick wins for this region. And they have to go together. We in this region have something very interesting, that we have major industries with production facility, and they need power only. So we have to start discussing and negotiating with them during, of course, 60 to 65% between summer and winter difference. Yes. So in winter, maybe we should offer to them, and in summer, to defer our investments and balance demand and supply, start taking from them. We have quite a few in the UAE, and we have started negotiating and discussing the interchangeability for improvement of the overall economics and the overall resource scheduling for the country.
Now, I'm very sorry, I'm not going to be able to take a question from you, sir. I'm really, really sorry. I know I've been encouraging you to ask questions, but we're literally down to below 2 minutes. So I'm going to take concluding remarks. Don't worry, I'm going to let you have the last word here. So please, audience, please forgive me. Some of our gentlemen will be around that you can talk to afterwards here. But as we've just got time for a few concluding remarks, when we look at what's the next step, what's needed, where's the optimism, and what do we absolutely positively have to do? Abdullah, I'll start with you.
Yes, I think...
you have 30 seconds.
Okay. I think the key word is implementation. We've been talking about renewable and a lot of things, but now it's a fact. So we should think about how to do things, and also what we've been talking about, the balance between demand and supply. One thing, I would like to switch hats now. I would like to invite everybody to the Congress for IDA in August, end of August. Yes, in San Diego. So I think that's a big event. Every 2 years we have a Congress, and I think with that I invite everybody here, and I think you will find a lot of things very interesting, and it will be addressed from different angles and international. Thank you.
A big international conference, and there's nowhere like San Diego in August. It's going to be a bit hot here. So I think that's a great idea. We're going to have to go. Patrick.
Very quickly, it all comes down to education. It comes down to partnership. It comes down to setting up big goals from a leadership standpoint. We, too, are going to be expanding our presence in the region here with local manufacturing, research capabilities, and building partnerships with different institutes. So we look forward to building partnerships and sharing education.
Adam, what's the next step?
Sure, I would say I could only encourage you to build that demand and supply balance. Actually understand the water that you need to deliver and the water that you need to source. Once you've done that, have a look at the levers. Use all of the levers that you have. Water efficiency, pricing, whatever's there in the toolbox, use it.
And Mohammed, it may not rain for the next few weeks, so what are you going to do when it's not raining out there?
The weather had changed. I mean, we have seen the desert white here in Saudi Arabia,
we saw some great pictures.
And in the UAE. So, yes, we must start to act and get the quick wins, and there are many, and just go and grab them and act to balance demand and supply.
Well, super. I love the sense of optimism here, and indeed, people who are in a position to actually do something. So that's also an added advantage here. It's not just a talking shop. You're gentlemen who are out there in the industry day by day actually implementing this. So good luck to you all. And again, it's that cooperation, the partnership, the leadership. So we're going to depend on you all to drive it forward. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. To you all. Thank you.